Hello everyone! Welcome to what was going to be a super awesome stream showing you lots of, final working gameplay. However, as with anyone who has been involved in software development, you understand that, or coding in general, of anything, that engineers write code which control little gremlins inside of computers. And those little gremlins are trying to make your code not work. And if they can find any excuse to make your code not work, they will do that. Unfortunately, in the age-old battle of engineer versus ghost in the machine, today, the ghost in the machine has won. So, we're going to do a bit of a different live stream. I could show you, old gameplay footage, but you guys have the other streams for that. So instead what I'm going to do is, because we just added the new, Teams thing where we showed all the developers and all that stuff, I figured what would be kind of fun is to show what everyone is doing behind the scenes. Who all these people are. You guys can see here, Domitus is a junior game designer and Dennis is a programmer, but you guys don't really know what they're doing, exactly what they're working on, and what their day-to-day struggles are. Today is a great example of that because, well, the whole team all had really cool things that they were working on, and everyone wanted to be able to show them off on the live stream today, but everyone pushed what they were working on during today, not the last minute, in the morning, and then we started preparing the build, which I was going to be playing on this live stream, and we found small compile errors with lots of different things that need to be fixed. That's totally normal and is the bane of any Unreal developer's existence, because I'll give you an example of something that can break a build in Unreal. Moving a file. Sounds super fucking, simple, right? You have a file architecture, so you have vehicles inside vehicles, you have vehicle 001, inside vehicle 001 you have vehicle textures for vehicle 0001. If you take one of those texture files and move it into another folder, it will break the game. And that's one error that you need to fix. And so many of those little things that they're not hard to fix, it's just when everyone pushes at the same time, and everyone was a bit rushed because we all want to make it in time for today's AMA, you end up with more errors than you can fix. And that's why an hour ago when David wrote me, scroll out here, and David, there we go. When David, one of our engineers, wrote me an hour ago saying that, look man, I don't think we're going to have the build ready in time, that's when I kind of got thinking, because he was stressing out, because he really wanted to get it ready in time, and because he wanted to show off the cool stuff we're doing. And by not having it ready in time, it means that nobody gets the satisfaction of being able to show the public what work we've done in the last month. And that kind of gave me the idea of going through and let's go person by person and show you behind the scenes what everyone's doing, what they're working on, and the troubles they're running into, and the struggles of their respective jobs. So, you guys know me. I don't really need to go on that. So, Domitus, let's start here. Domitus is a junior game designer, and what he works on, in general, he throws up ideas not ideas, that's wrong. He takes concepts of a system, for example, a mining system, not a mining system, mining ores, and he breaks it down into detailed information that the programmers can work with. And a good example of that is how long does a suit's oxygen last for? Programmers need a number. But in game design, that number is so deep. There's so much to that, because that's how long a player can be playing away from their base, how far they can venture, how much time you give them to be creative. For example, if your suit runs out of oxygen every 5 minutes, then that's a constant struggle you always want the player dealing with. If your suit runs out of oxygen every 3 hours, it's something the player will completely forget about and then need to address. So there's a lot of decisions and a lot of not only playtesting, but also, what's the right word? Theorizing? I don't know what the right word is. Like in Warhammer 40k, we call it Math Hammer, where you play the game in your head and you try and find a good starting point, a good like initial, like this is what we do now, and then we'll playtest it. So that's what he does. Let me actually bring up to physically show some of his work. More. Okay, so here is our internal game design document, where we go through a lot of details of what we're working on, and a good example of something that he did a lot of work on. Oh, so here's actually the oxygen system that we talked about. So in Mars 1, this is how the oxygen system works, and he breaks down these details. And some of them I do as well, but there's so many tasks to do that a lot of the time Domintus will be adding the detail and adding the, what's the right word? Actionable tasks out of that greater design. Another cool one to talk about would be machines. So for example, like this flow chart of how the machines are produced, something Domintus worked on. And now there's an interesting problem that arises that we ran into when we were working on this, that having a long production chain. By the way, all of this stuff you're looking at is for Mars 1, like the first version. You actually see in a lot of times, like when we're features, we have like, here's the farming, for example. Mars 1 not included. Mars 2, we have a small breakdown of it, and then we go into more detail when the engineers are ready to implement it. So anyway, back to machines. There's a challenge of how do you build a long progression system so that there's stuff for the players to be doing for a long amount of time, and at the same time, the initial play experience, so like the first couple of minutes, is still fun and easy and understandable. So what we actually ended up coming to here is that for Mars 1, the first thing you'll build will be a fabricator, but as you see here, I don't know if you can actually read that, but this note here is it's found in the shipwreck and assembled by parts. So the first fabricator that the player has in Mars 1, they'll assemble from parts that are already there. And then after that, but fabricators produce fairly slowly, so if you want to be producing multiple things in series, then you would need to craft more components out of the fabricator to make more fabricators. But those kind of decisions of how does the full progression system work, and at the same time, what do we give the players at the very beginning of the game? Another example of this is the solar battery charger, which is a way to generate electricity to run your suit and machines and stuff like that in Mars 1. But if you show up on Mars and you have no batteries at all, you have no way to charge batteries, and you have no way to produce anything, like there's no way for the player to get into that production loop. So that's a challenge of balancing that first experience, like how the player gets into the gameplay loop, and then how we keep that gameplay loop as interesting and as elongated as possible, like giving them as much progression as we can. Yeah. Oh, this is kind of a cool concept about the different arms, like the way they'll work on. This is something we want to be adding to all the characters and making this kind of the higher tier versions of tools. So like tier 1, you'll have like a drill or something like that to work with, and then at higher tiers, instead of using handheld equipment, you'll be using these kind of like robotic arm-based equipments. And then even higher tiers, for some things like mining, you'll end up having full exosuits which have even more powerful arms attached to them. So, that covers Domintus. Who is next? Dennis. Okay, Dennis is another one of our programmers. Let me show you So Dennis mainly works on the building system. Majority of the way, well, the way building works, all the building stuff you've seen thus far, that was all him. So this is in Mars 2, because Dennis already finished all of his tasks for Mars 1. So in Mars 2, what he is going to be working on, one of the first tasks that he has, is to get a wiring system to allow players to connect different machines to each other. Now, this is super early. Like, this isn't going to be something players will interact with for a long time. Like, even in Mars 1, this won't be in. But here, what we're working on and exploring is how to give players the control of basically building out the electrical grid of not only the inside of a room, but also of their whole base, how they connect to be able to have one power generator, for example, and then have power cables running out of that generator into a building, and then splitting up inside that building to run all your little detailed things. So the very first step that he had started exploring here was how to lay wires in a way that they conform to the environment. You can actually kind of see that here a little bit. Quality isn't great, but you can see how they conform here to the wall itself. So here is, for example, the smallest dome. And once again, these are not presentation images. Like, this is literally just the stuff I'm grabbing out of our development chat of, like, when Dennis was showing something working, something not working, etc. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that.
Joder, estoy en medio de presentación. Tengo a Apolo gritando y todo.
Sorry about that. So here is the construction of another dome. And as I said, these are not presentation-based images. This is just the stuff that we had that we were showing in the devblog. So here we have a video. There's the smallest size dome that you can build. And then here, Daniel is building out. Yeah, this is Daniel who uploaded the video, but Daniel is building out the larger dome. There you go. So this place, this is actually the medium-sized dome. And you can see, it's not finished. There's still a bit more work to be done, but what I wanted to be showing you on this stream was me building a dome-based base and etc. Also showing off some of the cool new features, like we got minimap working, and the active quests system. Quests is what we'll be using for the tutorial. We may use it for more things later on, but at least for the very beginning, we'll be using quests for the tutorial. So that, what Dennis was working on, was on that dome and on the wiring system. David is another one of our Unreal engineers. He is the one who, as you can see in the background here, was trying to get the build done, and unfortunately, we didn't get it in time. But other than being the build master, so every build that we make of the game, like the final, like compiling the EXE, he's the one who does. The reason why we do it like that is there is a lot of intricacies and little common errors that may pop up, and having the same person do it all the time on the same computer allows you to kind of foresee those issues. And it just streamlines the process a bit, and also just delegation of tasks. So David, outside of trying to get this build working, in the past 2 weeks has been working on getting the patcher for Mars 1 working. The reason why we need a patcher is because, I mean, I think most gamers know it's kind of obvious, but because this is kind of a live operations game and we'll be adding content and fixing things all the time, we can't just distribute like a Google Drive file that people download because we'll be updating and fixing things, and that file won't have those fixes. And and people have downloaded it before won't know there's a new fix to download. Normally in the modern day, what you do is you just have your game on Steam or the Epic Game Store, and they solve all of this. However, they are not crypto friendly, so they do not accept crypto-based projects or pay-to-earn games on their platforms. So it's kind of going back 10 years ago in game development when you had to be making your own patchers and stuff. Next person. Oh, David, outside of work, like in the past month, he's been working mostly on the patcher and some of the machines. The inventory system, a lot of that, the work for that was done by David. The resource system as well, like so the ores that are mineable, which I also want to be showing you right now. I probably have some videos of that actually. So the ore mining that you just saw there at the beginning, that was done by David. Some people have pointed this out and noticed that you see sometimes this random person standing in the background. Mars1 will be single player, but developing a game purely for single player is a bad idea. Because then when you try and make it multiplayer, everything will break. Like things need to be designed differently, etc. So despite Mars1 being only single player from the very beginning, every feature we're working on, we design them and implement them to support multiplayer. And this is how we test it. We have like a dummy version of the game running at the same time that's connected. And then we test where we need, we work on whatever we're doing, and we can find any errors of multiplayer use at that time as well. The reason why we're not launching it as multiplayer in day one is just because the amount of quality assurance and testing that needs to go in to make sure all the multiplayer stuff works and is fun to play multiplayer, even if you have a ping of like 300, that's a significant amount more work, and we would rather get something playable to you guys as soon as possible, and then once you have something to play, once you start giving us feedback about game design, the building systems, like balancing ore mining speed, stuff like that, while that's going on, then we'll be working on the quality assurance, stuff like that, to add multiplayer and the other features. And the upcoming vehicle system, David is the one who made the systems for fuel usage and stuff like that for vehicles. So a separate fuel inventory when the vehicles are running, they're burning whatever their energy fuel is. Daniel, he is our technical artist. A lot of the work on terrain generation and stuff like that he does. However, in addition to that, he's kind of a production associate. So like here's some of the work he's been doing. The new environment is not finished. There's still a lot left to do, but here is some cool screenshots that he posted recently of it. And when I say he's kind of been a production associate, he has been helping a lot with making sure the vehicles are going through the production pipeline correctly, interacting with the different artists, making sure that the programmers have what they need from the artists, etc., etc. He's been really tremendously helpful in that. What you're seeing here is a early work in progress of how Mars1 will begin. It will begin with your lander having crashed and you needing to sort out how to survive from that situation. I want to make kind of a more cinematic introduction to the game because I like doing that. I don't really have another reason other than I like doing stuff like that. We also have here kind of a before and after. Yeah. So here's what it was looking like before we updated some of the lighting. And this is what it's looking now with the better lighting. That's a lighting issue we have on the new map that we haven't finished. We'll sort it out. For some reason, all metallics are super bright. Oh, I know why that would be. Yeah. So the way metallics work in video games is there is, well, often, not always, often you have a global illumination, which is like this baked lighting of how the whole environment lights an object. And as the lighting on this map is new, I bet we never actually applied a proper skybox global illumination, and so it's just ending up pure white, which is making that ridiculously bright. Maybe. David is one of our 3D modelers. He models the machines primarily. He did. I don't remember which machines he did. But he did almost half of the machines. The other half of the machines was done by Edgerdas. Between the two of them, they did all the 3D modeling of the machines. Davor is a technical artist who's working on the environment generation, the way we the way we take the NASA data and convert that into detailed surface maps like this, although this is still very much work in progress. Actually, let's go back to Edgerdas. He also makes some of the tools. Here's one of the tools he made recently. Minor scaling problem there. So that's one of the other things Edgerdas does. Then what was it? Davor does a lot of the terrain generation, the taking NASA data, NASA elevation data, crater location data, stuff like that, and converting that into usable terrains that you can play a game on. That's what Davor has been focusing on. Spiros is the art director. He does concept art and guiding the production of assets. So, for example, a majority of the vehicles were produced by him. The concepts that you had seen before, for example, like all of these machines, these are all concepted by Spiros. The vehicles as well. I don't have vehicle concept art on hand. Next, Anderzak. Anderzak is a creative god. That's basically the only way to explain it. There is no... Yeah. He's a 60-something-year-old guy who has been doing digital paintings since, like, the first versions of Photoshop. Like, around the time, like, 20, 25 years ago. And he is just incredible, like a absolutely incredible artist. Some of the, it's like here you'll recognize this is the sci-fi semi truck. No, what's the name? We did actually name it the Shire HLVT, I believe. Anderzak painted this, and that's super cool. But like you can't give that to a 3D modeler because it's very high concept. Like, what do the wheels look like? How do the axles work? Like, where's the door? How do you get in? Like, there's so many details that are missing. So that's where Spiros comes in, and he breaks it down into something like this. Like, the way he explains it is that his job is to solve design problems. No. Well, this is more of Andrew's aspect. Like, the guy is just amazing. Absolutely crazy. There's another vehicle you'll probably see at some point in time. Some of the office concepts. So here's a good example. This vehicle in the background here. I didn't even know you could comment. That's cool. It's cool. I really like it. I want us to make a vehicle like that in Mars, but there's a lot of design problems of how the hell do you make that work. Like, for example, how do you make two tiny front wheels turn a vehicle? Right? How there's design and engineering problems to make sense of this cool idea into an actual physical vehicle that works. And that's what Spiros does. This one we'll also see. Well, both of these we'll see quite soon. Spiros is worried about this one. He's hesitant about making that in 3D because it's those design problems that I mentioned. Like, making that actually work in 3D, he is not confident it will turn out good. But I really like it, so I may override him on that. This one, though, is pretty clear. Like that, it's very easy to understand how that fits and works in 3D. More just cool office building concepts. general, what we call high concept. So this is like setting ambiance and theme and stuff like that. It's not concept anything specifically, not concept like how buildings look or anything like that, but like the feel. And then when we're working on the levels in the environment, we can look back at this like, did we capture the right feel? Just stuff. Oh, that's not a cool building. I really like that building. I think I jumped forwards through a lot of stuff. Yeah. I love this. I don't even know what that is. I don't know how to explain that, but it just looks super cool. Another kind of cool thing. So you'll see here, Ender Zach concepted out like very roughly this kind of plasticky white building, and there's another concept with it here, and that was great. And so that's actually something we got Edgar Dust on. So that's some of the stuff that he's been working on lately, and that's kind of taking those high concepts. So Spiros took this high concept, and then let's see if it's in this channel. Would be cool if it was. Probably isn't. No, because this was a new channel. But Spiros took that high concept, made some sketches that broke the details down a bit more, and then Edgar just started working on this. This is kind of cool. So here's what the initial like half walls look like. But what I wanted to try and do with it is to hide those joints. So we it's a saying from classical painting of hiding your brushstrokes. So to make the buildings feel more natural and not feel so constructed, we explored, like here you can see the whole progress of Edgar and I talking. So we started there, then we got to here, but you still see the joints between each one. And what I want to do is keep pushing to try and hide those joints. Got better, but you still kind of see them. And then here, we finally like got the solution. And what we did, see, like here you can barely even see that joint. And here you can just barely see it more than anything because these notches don't tile seamlessly. And that's what I was saying to him there. I gave him that feedback. And then I had another idea about what if we added some indentations around here to try and also hide the crap. Yeah. So yeah, these little indentation ideas, that turned into this. And as you can see, that really helps to hide that joint. Like really make it look like this whole wall was intended to be shaped like this. And the way we solved it, which is kind of interesting to see here, that we overlapped the two pieces. Because we can't control what angle the player will connect them in. So we had to extend it and then round it. So you can see here, no matter what angle you connect them at, like they fit together in a way that looks like they were intended to be that way. Steve. Steve is a vehicle 3D modeler. He made the first vehicle, the Shire, that I don't have the file of it. But the sci-fi semi-truck, that was made by Steve. The one that I showed here. This one, he was the one who made the 3D model of that. And lately, his latest vehicle he's working on this month is this one, which has not been named yet, but it is my favorite vehicle. I love that so much. So this is a one-person explorer vehicle with ground-penetrating radar to be able to search for resources throughout your land easier. It's to be quite fast, quite nimble, but it doesn't have a lot of carry capacity. As you see, like a lot of the internal hull space is taken up by that radar. But I really love how this turned out. Yeah, I just love it. And this was just posted today at 12. There's a little bit more work that needs to be done here on the texturing of the suspension systems, But then I think we're going to call this vehicle done pretty soon. Vlad. Vlad is another one of our 3D artists, and he did this vehicle. I'm not sure if you guys... I'm fairly sure you guys have seen this publicly yet. And Vlad specializes in mechanical engineering and designing systems that actually work, like realistically. So that's... You see a lot of his effect in the suspension systems and... the suspension systems, the turning systems, the way the wheels are controlled, that's where he spent a majority of the time there. I'm not sure if this video is drawn out publicly yet, but here you can see it in game, and you look at that, the undercarriage and suspension systems is just ridiculously like detailed, and that's Vlad's stuff. Like, this is, we call it mechanical porn. Vlad produces mechanical porn, and it's just awesome. And what you were seeing before when I was showing what Steve did, the suspension systems were designed by Vlad. Steve did the hull. I think he did the wheels. Maybe Vlad did the wheels. But the wheels were concepted by Spiros, and then Vlad or Steve modeled the wheels. Vlad did the suspension system. Steve did the hull of the vehicle. Chris is our writer, and he focuses... I've known him for 10 years or so. He's a very good friend of mine, and he's also one of my favorite sci-fi writers. And he focuses on short stories, typically. However, we've also been using him for lots of stuff on Mars. If any of you read the There Is Peace on Mars story, that was written by Chris, and the introduction to the Click Beetle and to the Shire, those were also both written by Chris. And Chris also does, I don't know what the term would be, but because he has almost always been a sci-fi writer, one of his skills is to find cool data points of like realistic things that are cool that make for good stories. And then the rest of the development team also can take that and run with it. A good example is, sunsets on Mars are blue. So that's an interesting factoid that Chris just collects, and then we can run with those. Another interesting thing is, if you think about it, just gravity is 1/3 of that on Earth. It means you can build way bigger vehicles, and stuff like aluminum, if you look at its strength to weight ratio, becomes one of the strongest materials for its weight in comparison to what we have on Earth. So you could build huge vehicles, and it's far more feasible, far more realistic for them to work on Mars, whereas on Earth, the mass of the structure would put so much strain on the structure that you very quickly get into an endless cycle where you keep needing to reinforce it to support the weight, but when you reinforce it, it gets heavier. Whereas on Mars, that threshold is so much higher. I mean, it's only 30%, but in practice, that makes it so much higher, you can build some massive vehicles. And that's why we build big-ass vehicles. That, and it's cool, but also because there is actually this scientific logic behind how there is actually value, that there is feasibility behind building large vehicles, and that feasibility, we play on that and push it as far as we can. Mohammed is another one of our programmers, and he is focusing on two things: character customization systems, and I'm not sure. So here is some character stuff they have show. Like, here's some concept art from Spiros for different uniforms, and here is some modeling of a character that we're getting into, and here's some discussions on the customization systems. But the what do you call it? I completely blanked out what I was trying to say. So yeah, he will be designing a character customization system and is already pretty well on the way for that. And that will also be part of the NFT generation for colonists, and the ability to customize them with different components, stuff like that. He's also working on the suspension systems for vehicles, the physics of, like, if you go over a rock, the wheel raises, which means the shock compresses, which means other things turn, like all those mechanical interactions. He's dealing with that. And then we have Omar, who is a 2D artist, who I've also worked with for a very long time. However, he just kind of recently joined our team. I'm like slowly collecting basically everyone who I've worked with over the past 15 years who was good. I'm like collecting them and hiring them all for Mars. Because I like working with them and also because they're really good. So far what Omar has done has mostly been just some design work and stuff on different environments. Like here's the office on Mars, which is well into production. Ooh, there's actually some cool stuff I can show. And that's actually some people who are not on this team list, but I need to add. Let me show you Abby, who did the lighting for the office on Mars. Yeah, this looks awesome. So another guy who isn't on this list is Abby, and he does lighting, and this is one of the environments. This environment was made by Vlad. Remember, Vlad, this guy Vlad. He made this environment, and then Abby did the lighting of it. As I said, the build, I didn't get it working in time today, but we'll put out some more gameplay videos of it so you can see this stuff working live in a couple of days once the build's fixed. And yeah, time to go through questions. I understand it, Mars1, we are not building on our own lands, so are we going to lose what we build or transfer them back, or transfer the resources back, or transfer the buildings? In Mars1, we'll be giving you resources, and in Mars1, you'll be collecting resources in the same way you will in future Marses, where you are just mining the rocks in your environment, exploring your environment, mining them, refining them, etc. Those resources will not transfer into future versions of Mars. However, they won't transfer future versions of Mars, but at the same time, you're not buying them. They're just what you gather from your land. In future versions of Mars, we'll be introducing the marketplace we'll be introducing resources to the MCC, to the marketplace, so that at that point, players, if you mine more than you need or you want to make a business out of it, you can mine resources and then sell it on the marketplace to people who don't want to be mining. Someone else asks, Nick, will there be anything on Mars connected to Elon Musk? And also, will there be any animals? Will there anything on Mars connected to Elon Musk? Well, we take a lot of inspiration from Musk's plans to get people on Mars. You can see it in some of our design concepts and stuff. And they're, we take a lot of inspiration from it. However, maybe if we get a partnership with Elon Musk, that would be awesome. It would be awesome to put some official Elon Musk stuff on Mars. Will there be animals? In the first versions of Mars, no. However, I'm a big pet person, so I would love if we could get pets in the game as well, but that's not an immediate priority. What can a player die from? In Mars 1, a player will be able to die from lack of oxygen or falling ridiculously far. I don't know if there's anywhere actually where players will be able to fall far enough to actually kill them. So in Mars 1, it's basically just lack of oxygen. In Mars 2 onwards, you'll be able to die from lack of oxygen, lack of food, lack of water, temperature, radiation. And then there's stuff that compounds on that, like a sandstorm could make it harder for you to travel and could drain more of your suit's energy, which means your suit may not be able to heat you for as long, which means you'll die of temperature. Like that would be the cause of death would be hypothermia, but like what caused it was actually the sandstorm, not just the cold. Can some kind of accident happen during a storm? A fragment will fall into the base and depressurize will occur, the air will leave. Tell me more about building damage. There will be building damage from storms, however the goal here is not to avoid gotcha gameplay. So there wouldn't be a kind of situation where you have a perfectly fine base, it's all fresh, new, repaired, refurbished, and then a storm hits and instantly like you lose 3 wall panels, stuff like that. That's not what we're trying to go for, because That's gotcha gameplay. That's not what we want. What we would be doing is that over time, parts of the building, over many, many storms, would be deteriorating. And if you leave your base unattended and you're not upkeeping it between storms and so forth, it could reach a point where a storm hits and it's the final straw for some of your building pieces, for some of your wall sediments, and at that point they may crack, they may rupture, and they may no longer be able to hold an atmosphere inside of them. Will it be possible to do business on Mars like on Earth? Yes. As I mentioned now a few times with our, the goal is to have a jobs system where you can make basically a contract between two players, and either player, there's a huge list of ways you can make the contract. So X player could be giving Y player so much resources, and in return Y player will achieve X task. And you set that up, and then you both players agree to the contract, and then you can walk away from it, and if Y player does live up to his end of the bargain, then the money is given to him, or the resources, the whatever. And that system we want to make as robust as possible so that you can run any kind of business, because that's just the foundational concepts of two people exchanging goods or services. Goods and services for goods or services. Will there be integration with solar metaverse projects such as Earth, the Moon, and Venus, and accordingly moving through portals or what? As I understand, I can't talk this specifically. I'm not part of the affiliations team, but I do believe, not affiliation, the partnerships team. I do believe we have spoken to them, and their talks are going on. I'm not sure. I don't know any more than that. That's just something I oversaw in one of the I overheard in one of the management telegrams. Unfortunately, I don't know more than that. How to extract or mine ores from the bottom of crater at the initial and further stages. Stairs, elevators, steps from foundation or whatever, moving vertically. It depends a lot on how steep the walls of the craters are and stuff like that. But all the examples you gave could be ways to get in and out of a crater fairly safely. I don't think there's actually anything other than vehicles. There'll be some vehicles that will be quite fast and have very good traction, and you'd probably be able to jump vehicles in and out of craters. But not all vehicles. That's a good example of something that what we're currently just calling the exploration vehicle. This one will probably be able to jump its way in and out of most craters. And it has a suspension system strong enough to be able to support the landing on the other side. Oh, so those are ways to get in and out of the bottom, and then once you're there, you can carry it out on your character or load it up into a vehicle. You could build ramps in and out of a crater so that you could drive even heavier load vehicles in and out of the base of the crater. And will we be experiencing meteor showers as a threat blessing, and will we be able to construct countermeasures? This is something that we've been discussing, we haven't decided on. This is something that Dennis actually brought up, that we could support meteor showers as a high-risk event which could punch small holes in your building, which could allow the atmosphere to start leaking out slowly, and then you'd have to patch up those holes. The functionality for that is there, that's why Dennis had the idea. However, the game design implications of that, we haven't really decided on yet. I'm not sure if we want to go that route or not. As I said, I am very much against gotcha gameplay, and I feel like that's pretty close to the line. So that was all the questions from Telegram and Discord, and now let's see what people have posted during this stream. Baby Yetu NFT. When the compiler gives you lemons, make lemonade. Yes. When the compiler gives you lemons, you want to jump out of a freaking window. Hello to everyone. I'm only now seeing the chat. Everyone who was saying hello previously. What's the plan to keep the tokens stable? Maybe stablecoin pairing for specific in-game stability. Let's say that 3 times fast after many beers. That's a good idea. It's something we have been discussing. This is one of the things that we'll be kind of finding out as we go, because obviously the goal would be to not require any additional systems outside of just the normal free market of the Mars4 coin. And right now, as the project still hasn't launched, as you don't have people buying and selling stuff, like producing and selling and buying stuff on the market for the Mars4 that's resulting in a lot more speculation, because you don't have people actively using the currency that much for its intended use. So we'll see if that trend continues, like once they're actually playing the game and stuff like that. But the idea of pairing it with a stable coin is something we have considered, and we'll see how it goes. I think it's too early to make a decision, because there's so many factors at play. There will be so many factors at play on the value of the Mars4 once people are actually playing the game and trading stuff, that to make decisions right now without those factors in play is kind of rash. In terms of the scale of a single land plot, can you use one of your visuals to help contextualize how much land I get for a single plot? I.e. one plot is as far as the eye can see, sometimes two. Yeah, let's see what this is standing near the center of a land plot. And that mountain range is the edge of it. And I don't have a character in this scene to show, but like these rocks of it, like, so this image is taken at about, let's say, 3 meters off the ground, and that mountain range in the distance is the edge of the land plot. So there's a lot of room, but so your limitation isn't going to be in building space. Like, it'll be very, very rare for someone to actually run out of building space on a single land plot. But your limitation will be more in the realm of resources. It looks cool, but it doesn't actually answer your question. So the larger land plot you have, the more area, the more resources you have on those plots, the more room you have to be mining stuff, and also the more room you have to lease out to have other players mine and give you a portion of those resources that they mine. So even owning additional land plot that you never want to build on could be a income stream of resources or currencies if you rent them out for mining for money. Will there be underground dwellings? The current plan is not to have them, because once you start going underground, a lot of the survival challenges of the game can be removed quite easily, like the high temperature swings, the radiation, storms, etc. And then there's also a very complicated element once you get into terrain deformation, because we already have like 100,000 land plots, unique land plots. To add into that the ability for people to dig in their land plots and then remember, not only generate realistic Martian surface, but then let people dig on Mars and keep track of all that, it becomes a ridiculous amount of data to keep track of. So the current plan is not to allow any subterranean dwellings or digging on Mars or terrain deformation. However, it's not... I am interested in the idea, but right now there's a lot of like technical hurdles before we can even really consider whether we'd want to add it or not. So at that point, if we can find ways to overcome those technical hurdles, then I may be more open to it. But in general, my priority is always, let's get something working, let's get something playable, get into people's hands as soon as possible. And there's a lot of R&D left to explore whether that's even possible. So terrains look fascinating. Will there be any chance that you would provide these re-imaged terrains back to NASA or any other parties that want this data? That's actually something we're considering. I mentioned this on the previous AMA, that we're taking a lot of data from the Martian surface from different space agencies and combining it in a way that hasn't been done before, like combining NASA elevation maps with crater impact charts and stuff like that to generate a far more accurate elevation map than has ever been produced for Mars before. And we're not sure who may be interested in that. I definitely think it has a lot of value because it's Martian surface data that doesn't exist, isn't really the right word, because it has never been combined and rendered out in this manner. We're taking all the data that already exists, but mixing it all together and creating a single cohesive map of Mars at a higher quality level than has ever been done before. So I'm sure there'll be parties that are interested in that, but I guess that hasn't really been something I've been thinking of. Like, for all I know, partnerships may already be speaking to people, but I kind of keep my head focused just on the design side. Someone mentioned the wheels could be replaced with tracks, and in my opinion would look cool, and tracks have easier mechanics when it comes to turning the vehicle. Yeah, we have considered including some tracked vehicles as well. The interesting thing is that on Mars, tracks aren't as necessary, isn't the right word. I guess kind of. Because all the vehicles are so much lighter, one of the biggest advantages of tracks, there's many advantages, but one of the main ones is that you can spread out the weight of the vehicle across a far larger surface area. And that is not as necessary on Mars, because everything weighs a third. There's also some technical constraints when it comes to making tracks. Like you have to get kind of clever in how you implement tracks. But I'm sure we'll be making some tracked vehicles. Someone asked, can anyone enter my building? No. I mean, to start with, anyone can't enter your land unless you set the land to public, which there'll be a lot of advantages to. Like people can't come and mine on your land and give you a portion of it if your land is set to private. But for the first stage, you can do that. Second, and also if your land is set to private, you won't get a portion of any trade that goes through your land, because trade will have to go around your land. But even past that, there'll be guild systems, basically like DAOs for each land, and you can set who has ability to do what on your land. So, for example, only people who are like the third tier up in your DAO would even be able to open and close doors on your land. And the second tier up is able to build stuff, and the first tier up is able to mine. And that way, if someone could join your land that's not in your DAO at all, and there's nothing they can really do. Like, they can drive around and explore it, but they can't actually like interact or do anything unless you give them permission. Someone says they're looking forward to Mars4 looking like the next Cyberpunk game with huge cities and stuff. Yes, me too. I am super keen on that. Question, what will be the minimum hardware requirement for Mars 1? It's hard to say just yet because we're optimizing it as much as we can, but my current guess is that, my guesstimate is you should be able to run the game on high graphics settings at 60 FPS with a GTX 980, which is like a 6-year-old card now, 7-year-old graphics card. That's kind of more or less what I'm aiming for. We may be able to get a bit lower, we'll see. And then obviously like you can run it on lower graphics settings, turn it off shadows and stuff like that, which will run it even better. But that's kind of the closest to an answer I can give you right now. Someone asked, is it possible to have subterranean environment loaded separately from the surface terrain so there's no collision issues, etc.? Yes, it is possible. That is, if we were to do subterranean bases, that's probably how we would do it. That's one idea that I did have of how to do caves and stuff like that, basically what Skyrim does, where you have where you reach the cave entrance, enter the cave, there's a loading screen, and then you have the internal cave environment. That would probably be the easiest way to do stuff like that, and work for subterranean as well, and like lava tunnels and etc. Are huge cities possible with skyscrapers, etc.? Yes, they are. There will be, it'll reach a point where performance won't be great, but we'll be always doing everything we can to try and optimize those situations. But eventually, if you build a big enough city with enough people, like that's always going to be where the bottleneck lies. But we'll be doing everything we can to optimize that as much as possible. So you said there will be a contract system which will allow players to make contracts between users. In the real world, breaches of contracts are subject to penalties and legal actions. How will this be handled in the game? So the goal within the game is not to have anything that we need to enforce outside of the contract itself. So in the contract, you'll be able to introduce penalties or put up collateral, etc. And if you want to. But someone may not agree to that contract. You can also just have open-ended contracts that if someone mines on your land, you get Y percentage of it. And that's our goal. We don't want to be... First of all, we don't want to allow people to break contracts. In terms of like loopholes or stuff like that. And then secondly, we don't want to be punishing people for stuff. This should be in the hands of the players. Like, the players can agree with contract is there's no way to, like, and they set the guidelines of what it is. They set what completion would be, what's the reward for completion. If there is a failure to complete, what is that penalty? But there's no, like, you wouldn't, well, yes, it would be possible to pay someone in advance for mining, but we wouldn't recommend you do that. Like, the whole point of the contract system would be, for example, to design it so that you get paid when you deliver the mining resources. So you could just not deliver them, but then you don't get paid. So the idea is kind of create it in that kind of system so that we don't open the door to, like, living up to contracts and stuff like that. Just let the players set it up as they want. We need more updated game leaks in the Discord channel. Yes, you do. You are right. That's been my fault. The past 2 weeks have been crazy. As you guys saw in the last, podcast kind of chat we had, I was up in Lithuania with the rest of the team, and with the flight back and all the cool stuff I want to get in, I haven't been putting as much love in that Discord chat as I should be. Someone asked, when will the game go live? Mars 1 will be live in Q2, and we're already halfway through Q2, so it'll be pretty soon. Exact date hasn't been set yet. And yeah, so within Q2, the first version of Mars, which is the single player version, it doesn't have vehicles yet, but it's focusing on mining, resource gathering, resource processing, and building of bases, etc. And someone asked, how frequently can we switch a land plot between public and private? I don't know. We'll need to test that. We'll need to see how those edge cases show up and what is the gameplay mechanics we want. In general, as I'm sure that those of you who have been through many of these streams with me before know that I'm against too much pre-planning, because seeing a plan on paper doesn't mean it's a good plan. It just means it's words on paper. So that, like, how often you're able to switch between public and private on your land plot, there is so many secondary effects that could have that it's something we'll need. Once we get to that point, we'll need to just play test it, see what works, see what doesn't, and what happens, for example, to strangers on your land plot when you switch it to private, etc. I think that's the end of all the questions, guys. Thank you for coming around. I am very sorry that I wasn't able to show you all the cool systems. Well, I showed you all the cool systems that we're working on, but I wasn't able to actually just play the game and demo them. And I am sorry about that, but you'll be able to see them pretty soon and play them pretty soon in Mars 1. Thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out with me at the end of a very painful day full of bugs and errors that we're trying to fix. Thanks, guys. I will see you later.